Before we begin, here is an outline of every point and their timestamps within this video for those who want to review. This is a comprehensive dissection of Viruszeke response document in a video format. I found that it is an easily digestible and accessibility-friendly way of relaying information. As stated before, I do not condone the witch hunting, harassment, doxing, false reporting, nor threatening of any individuals involved. I am not associated with those who do so. Be safe, be smart, and be responsible. Thank you. In his response document, Viruszeke adamantly believes that he is being framed as a groomer and that the initial document contains no screenshots or evidence regarding the allegations made against him. In the doc, Zeke states, "Grooming is a deliberate action of preparing minors to do illegal things. I have made it so clear that no taboo or harmful stuff should be performed in real life in any way, especially physical self-harm, and everyone involved knew that. They're smart enough to speak about taboo topics without the intention of sexually assaulting or exploiting anyone in reality." He then adds that the document, quote, "continues to claim that I have committed sexual grooming of actual life minors," concluding with the notion that there is zero evidence of any sort of grooming. First, we must understand the definition of grooming, its types, and the behaviors involved. Sexual grooming is when the offender aims to sexually abuse their victims. Through grooming, the offender cultivates a relationship with their victims, builds trust and a connection in order to lower their inhibitions and prepare them for sexual activity. The objective is sexual abuse. Non-sexual grooming is when the offender aims to exploit or manipulate their victims in some way. Through grooming, the offender cultivates a relationship with their victims, builds trust and a connection for exploitative reasons. The objective is personal gain. Please note that non-sexual grooming is not always a precursor to abuse, and not all grooming behavior is harmful or malicious. In general, grooming victims and offenders can be any age, gender, race, religion, and ethnicity. Anyone can be an offender, no matter the group or community. It can happen in any environment, and anyone can be groomed into anything. It can occur over a short or long period of time, days, weeks, months, even years, and happen both online and in person. Groomers can target one particular victim, multiple, or even a community. Most importantly, it can involve any type of abuse, emotional, mental, physical, or psychological. It is a process. As Zeke himself wrote, any topics can lead to grooming. Next, it is important to note the general behaviors involved in grooming, which include, but are not limited to, targeting. Offenders may often target possible victims based on perceived vulnerability and ease of access. Targeted victims aren't always strangers. Offenders can also use those who they already know and have an established relationship with. Gaining trust. Attempting to gain friendship or develop a closer bond, catering to the victim, discussions of shared interests, sharing personal details and moments, and keeping and sharing secrets. Special attention, gifts, money, compliments, or love bombing, and making the victim feel special. The offender treating the relationship and friendship as special, and in the case of minors, treating them like an adult, gaining the trust of their parents, family, or caretakers. Offering advice or understanding. Gaining power. Intimidation, such as threats, verbal abuse, sabotage, and using the victim's insecurities against them. Usage of authority or reputation over the victim, a clear power imbalance. Coercion and persuasion. Manipulation, shaping the victim's perspective and viewpoint. Emotional manipulation, ultimatums, gaslighting, guilt-tripping, creating fear, and maintaining control. Desensitization. Rationalization. Isolation, messaging privately, in spaces away from the public eye, or from family and friends. Why might a victim deny that they're being groomed? They feel shame or guilt. They are unaware of the grooming, a result of manipulation, general ignorance, or normalization and rationalization of the behavior, or have a lack of understanding. They don't want their groomer to get into trouble, or they fear jeopardizing the relationship with their groomer. Now that we are up to speed, I'll be giving a quick summary of how this all began. The links to both documents are in the description below. On December 29, 2023, Viruszeke announced the creation of a server centered around pro-shipping and pro-fiction by January 1st of 2024. He stated that the server was 15+ and therefore safe for work. Adults and minors would be strictly separated, and adults would need to provide an ID for access to the 18+ space. It will be a normal server with no heavy discourse involved, just games and general interest without involving the usual fiasco. You can treat the server like a normal hangout place without antis. That's pretty much it, to be honest. Taboo topics are moderated and only allowed in adult spaces. The server separates both sections and they cannot see each other's channels. I have modded Discord for 4 years to know and censor this stuff properly. This was a closed-off server. Its members were personally chosen and invited by him. The replies to this announcement were sprinkled with concerns about possible grooming risks due to the server's low age requirement and the nature of the topics involved. Without proper moderation, it is incredibly easy for harmful behavior to occur or be overlooked one way or another. This can happen in any Discord servers regardless of what it's for or related to. The level of risk, however, can be higher or lower depending on the topic, but never zero. This is why safety and moderation are important and one of the first things to consider when creating a Discord server. They are notorious for being a hazard breeding ground. In Zeke's response, he explains how in spite of the short lifespan of the server, quote, handling it already felt like I was dealing with Hell's Gate, and I would instead not take the risk. He barely touches on the topic of the old server and hastily brushes it off. In it, only the moderators were able to message in both separated sections of the server between minors and adults. While there aren't very many photos of the server, some are available of Zeke specifically speaking to a user age 16. This user had an archive of her own account where she labels himself a not safe for work writer, with no age listed, and sent one of his explicit works in the server. As for the server itself, it died out quickly, and as a result, Zeke created a new server that came to be known as That's B. Many of the previous server members moved into it alongside the new ones added. This totaled to about 86 members. Again, this was still a closed-off server where members were required to be personally invited by Zeke. If the previous server was so much of a hassle to handle even with so many safety precautions in place, why deliberately create a new one with most of them gone? This all occurred within the first couple of months of 2024. It was very early on with plenty of time to consider risks and safety. With that out of the way, let's discuss the evidence provided by both documents and clarify exactly how they connect to the grooming allegation. The purpose of the evidence provided in Section 1 was to showcase the explicit content, as in inappropriate because the word has multiple meanings, and conversations adults and minors were engaging in on multiple occasions within the server's year-long lifespan about dark fiction and dead dove topics, including, but not limited to, non-con, incest, CSA, pedophilic ships, and lolicon/shotacon. This wouldn't be an issue if the server were for adults only. Whatever legal activities an adult does with other consenting adults isn't the business of anyone nor a problem. However, the ages of the members involved ranged from 15 to 30 years old. The authenticity of these conversations was further proven as some of the adults involved ultimately acknowledged and apologized for what they had said with varying levels of sincerity. As I've previously stated, Viruszeke personally chose these members for his server. It was a mix of people he knew previously, including minors, and new members. It was advertised as a safe-for-work, moderated safe space where they could freely discuss their shared interests with one another without discrimination or judgment, and create and share related content. In their eyes, the best part was that it was made by a very well-known individual in their community that they trusted and looked up to. He weaponized the negative experiences with online discourse they had to keep them close to him, hence the quote, safe space. Several minors mentioned being hypersexual, mental illnesses and disorders they had were listed in their introductions, and as mentioned previously, a hypersexual 16-year-old actively engaged with not safe for work content on AO3 whilst being allowed to post his work from it in the server. Multiple teens developed close bonds with the adults in the server, including Zeke. This was also apparent in the way they refer to and speak about them, especially him. These were all things Zeke was and is fully aware of. The server's environment normalized this behavior, and information about what went on within it wasn't public knowledge until the document was released. An extra point to bring up is him mentioning DMs as though that were the only way to facilitate grooming. This isn't the only method of isolation, as we've established. By all means, can a Discord server be an environment for grooming no matter what it's about? It's very disingenuous to specifically point to direct messaging when you yourself make it clear how, as of recent, you don't accept them and don't like to directly message people. Do not trust strangers ever, not even me, not even the one you deem safe. Do not try to make people, especially minors, only have the internet to trust. Protect yourself. To recap, he claims he made it clear that taboo topics or harmful stuff shouldn't be performed in real life and in any way, especially self-harm, and that everyone involved is smart enough to speak about these topics without the intention of sexually assaulting or exploiting anyone in reality. Later on, he states that when he was as young as 13, he indulged in this type of content, incest is specifically mentioned, and that it is important that people are able to explore the nature of horror and taboo in a sexual or non-sexual manner because it is, quote, what psychologists would say and recommend. He goes on to explain how in one particular instance, his younger cousin, aged 10, visited his home and was aware of things like rabbit hole and oshinoko, and even wrote about abuse with her characters. None of this content is at all appropriate for a child of this age, and her awareness of it is a very big red flag. It is also public knowledge and mentioned in the doc that Zeke is a CSA and incest survivor at the hands of his family members. Teens exploring this type of content in a space with adults in near secrecy creates a dangerous environment that is a minefield of safety risks. This connects to his main argument consisting of, quote, everyone loves being edgy and indulging in edgy characters one way or another. He believes that his personal experiences and beliefs can generally apply to others. If he was able to indulge in this content, other young folks can as well. They do it all the time. It happens all the time. Or, I did it when I was younger, doesn't make it okay. But why does this matter, really? Zeke is a person on the internet. He is not a professional like a teacher, psychologist, parent, or doctor. If randomly pointing out your 10-year-old cousin's lack of adult supervision and internet safety is meant to prove that the intention of allowing what happened in your server is educational or meant to keep minors safe by giving them an outlet to explore, it's not up to you to decide what content is or isn't appropriate for the underage members of your private server to indulge in based on your personal experience and or beliefs. In that case, you can speak for yourself, but not for others. You can't even moderate reliably, even with your, quote, 4 years of experience. The nature of the content involved is sexual. You cannot look at a conversation like this and argue that there is nothing wrong with 21-plus-year-old adults and young teenagers talking about their love of non-consensual sex in fiction or smutty one-shot fanfiction. Arguing that the minors saying they weren't in any danger or that they knew of the content beforehand and therefore it's fine for them to discuss with adults because they trust them is the exact type of rationalizing used by groomers to manipulate underage victims. You are treating them like adults and convinced them that they are smart and mature enough to handle these discussions with people in their mid-20s and 30s, and somehow you're convinced that that excuses everything. They can explore the topics with each other without the participation of some grown-ass man they know off the internet, in moderation. Even publicly if it's strictly safe for work or appropriate for their age demographic. But ultimately, it's not up to you, an online stranger, to decide. Rather, it's being aware of your responsibility as an adult and not taking the risk in the first place. Minors cannot ever consent to adults. The only exception to this is healthcare. Speaking directly to him here, you can take it up with your lawyer if you somehow need the confirmation or proof that minors can't consent. If a counter-argument be made about something like sexual education for teenagers being completely acceptable, I ask that you show your teacher's certificate and bachelor's degree in education. 2 members involved mentioned that some of the conversations they had were directed to a specific person. A minor discussing these topics with another minor, or 2 very close in age, like 17 and 18, in their own space or through direct messaging is less of an issue, and we've established that 2 or more consenting adults in an adults-only space is completely fine, safe for work or not. Both together is also no problem if it's a moderated server, because safety is the highest priority. But again, this server contained up to 86 members, and openly speaking to someone specific within it is still visible to everyone else, adult and younger members included. If, for example, I were a minor and jokingly stated something sexual to my friend of equal age in a server, everyone can easily see that inappropriate remark because it is an open space with others. By technicality, everyone is involved. Reminder that Discord is a communication app while something like Twitter is a social media platform. I'll provide another example. I'm an adult. The other consenting party is also an adult, and we frequently joke in a sexual manner. On a social media platform, this is subjective based on a few factors, but overall it's acceptable because it's public social media. Anything too explicit, like sending pornographic material to each other, should be in its designated space, if it wasn't already obvious, or in private. It's based upon the guidelines of the platform used as well. On the contrary, if the situation were in a Discord server that is specified as 15+ and safe for work, it is unacceptable. By no means should younger members be allowed or encouraged to also do so in public, and especially with adults present, because it is a hazard to their safety. I think that it isn't wholly up to adults online to moderate themselves for kids, because it is also a responsibility that their parents and the platforms need to uphold. That's also why it's important that age ratings exist. In general, you shouldn't let a kid roam unsupervised on the internet, and a platform should always have some sort of moderation, guidelines, and system in place that people can follow and easily access. Additionally, Zeke argued that he was hardly involved because his friends and members did most of the talking in comparison to him. The point is that he shouldn't have been involved in the first place. Many of the photos showed him making comments within the conversations and being a part of them. As the server owner, allowing this to occur is also direct involvement. As I and many others have said, there are 0 excuses, and it is very telling of his character that he reflected blame onto the others involved, whom he supposedly cares so much about. Zeke intentionally allowed, participated in, and defended most of this. He uses the term, quote, careless mistakes, and even tried to use mental illness as some sort of excuse initially. People struggling with mental illness and disorders can do no wrong, can they? This isn't an excuse, but a reason or cause. The mentally ill or disordered are still human beings that should be treated as such, albeit with the right accommodations depending on their situation. They are people, and what makes them good people is knowing how to take accountability for their actions. Since the very beginning, the server should have been 18+ only. If the doc hadn't been made and the happenings of the server remained private, Zeke never would have scrubbed the server list and changed it for adults. It took me a bit longer to realize how uncomfortable and risky it is for everyone. A year is not a bit. Zeke knew of the risks when he made the previous server and brought up how hellish it was to moderate. This was not his first supposed mistake either. You are not only an adult in this situation, but the owner with all the authority over what occurs in your server. You couldn't handle the previous server with even tighter restrictions and instead opted to create a new one with even less of such. You convinced your members that they were safe, that they all could handle themselves, and that the things discussed and shared were fine because of how you viewed them. If there's anything the evidence shows clear as day, it's the fact that Zeke and his friends shouldn't be in a space with underages. Section 9 goes into 2 situations involving Zeke and former friends of his. The point was made to highlight Zeke's behavior when speaking to minors in private DMs and was promptly swept under the rug as unrelated friend drama in his rebuttal. The first situation took place in late 2022. Zeke was 21 and his friend at the time, Sinishu, was 17. The next situation occurred the year after in 2023. Zeke was 22 and the friend here, Honkish, was 17. For those unaware, I'll give a quick rundown. Sinishu was a former friend of Zeke's. They began to notice that he was mistreating their friend Honkish, who was friends of both of them, by generally being inconsiderate, rude, and dismissive of them and some others, among other things that aren't very relevant here. Whether he did so intentionally or not, Shu wanted to privately communicate these concerns to Zeke, and the ensuing conversation occurred. The conversation was meant to resolve conflict by bringing it to Zeke's attention and nothing more. What happened was Zeke initially expressed appreciation for Shu's honesty and wanting to discuss what happened. It's okay, I appreciate that you wanted to talk about it. Yeah, I didn't want to bring it up publicly because it's not something that really needs to be public, just shit to be talked about privately. Shu was trusting of Zeke and admired him. They mentioned that in spite of everything, they still enjoyed spending time with him and loved what he created. Zeke asks Shu if there were any additional concerns they had, which Shu didn't at the moment. Is there anything else that you're uncomfortable with and wanting to talk about too with me? Not that I can think of, to be honest. I'm a bit tired, so if I think of anything else, I might bring it up later. I'm not sure how to feel with the sentence, please think about the people I care about now. That genuinely hurts. The further the conversation went on, the more Zeke started to bring up how he personally couldn't understand what he did wrong and the good things he'd done for his friends. This is a habit for him. I still can't wrap myself to think who I ignored and talked over on purpose. Because I'm sure I tried my best to talk whenever I can, and if I know nothing of the topic, I just stay silent. But yeah, I can tell you one thing about the stuff earlier. I tried my best for everyone, and I tried my best to always talk, interact, do something for them, and especially spending time with my friends. I played back Sky, Children of the Light, despite the workload I have, just to grind for hours to pilot my friends through getting stronger in the game. We had a lot of fun just being silly and doing things in there. I have done several fan arts and have drawn so much of people I care for, and I want to do more of this if I'm not too busy with multiple commissions and projects I have. My clients have been waiting. That's good. I think that's something to really cherish, I guess. So it does hurt a lot to see, especially coming from you, one of the people I really cherish, to say that one particular sentence. Before I continue, by this point one thing is made clear. The manipulation Zeke employs when faced with criticism directly. Being fully aware that his word alone is enough to convince a majority of his fans, Zeke publicly refuses to address this portion of the document. I, for one, can understand why he wouldn't want to bring any sort of attention onto it, because it is exactly what he claimed the doc lacked in evidence. Direct messages with victims. Zeke and Shu have developed a friendship that he specifically uses the word cherished for. When it comes to Shu's criticism of him, he uses phrases like, "that hurts a lot," coming from you, because he wants to make it more apparent to Shu that their bond means a lot to him, and this does 2 prominent things. Number 1. Establishes that their relationship is special to him in some way. Number 2. Emotionally manipulates the victim, Shu, through the use of guilt tripping. Victims are far less likely to speak out against the offender if they are made to believe the problem is their fault. If they're particularly attached to their abuser, they wouldn't want to jeopardize their relationship. This is one of the many reasons why victims might remain unaware of grooming. There wasn't any reason for Zeke to abruptly shine a spotlight on what he's done for others here, which makes it all the more obvious that his intentions in doing so weren't in good faith. Good people don't use what they've done for brownie points in the face of criticism. In the document against Zeke, the specific piece of evidence is tied primarily to his narcissism, but on all accords is also using his good reputation against Shu. Imagine being put in this situation. You're 17, close friends with someone 4 years older than you and well regarded by most people, even having a reputation as a creator. You take notice of this friend acting a certain way and how they aren't aware of how it's affecting your and their friends. But you think, they're grown, we care about each other, surely they'll understand. In the beginning, they seem to somewhat handle it all well and show appreciation for your honesty and concern. Then all of a sudden they mention not understanding how they could have possibly done any wrong, and how they'd done and given so much for other people. They mention how much you hurt them by not only criticizing them, but seeing them in a negative way. The conversation continues. I'm a bit protective of my friends, I think. I have a hard time letting bad things happen to them and I'm sorry. I wasn't expecting it to be taken harshly. I probably should have phrased shit better. It feels I come by only to use people, and I'm far from doing that, and I know boundaries when it is there. Right. Just, workload as an adult is not even a joke. I get it actually, it's the same way with my mom. She struggles to keep us afloat a lot, overworks. I'm going to continue and work. Really sorry if I ever hurt you at all. Not gonna lie, this conversation is making me spiral into so much thoughts I'm not sure where to start. I'm not sure if I do enough for people at all. And I'm sorry if I ever make you feel any certain way. I'm sorry that your impression of me is ruined. I really, really try my hardest for everything. I think all I can ask for is improvement? You're a good person, Esty. I think you got this. This is the unfortunate result of guilt-tripping's effects on a victim. Shu having to sugarcoat their words in an attempt to calm Zeke. Shifting the initial topic to now be about him, it's clear from these messages that Zeke doesn't like that he's been made aware of an issue that his actions caused. He wants his reputation and people's opinion on him to remain untainted, and the further down we continue, the more overt that becomes. I thought I have done everything I could? It is not enough? I don't think friendship is a quantitative thing you can have just by making stuff for people. It's a kind thing to do for friends, but I think treating them with utmost kindness is probably the best way to consistently keep people close. I don't think it's that you haven't done enough, but you're looking at it from an angle that needs to be changed a bit. Real friends only want you to treat them well with respect and kindness, things like that. I'm sorry, I really don't get it. I love making friends, and I like talking to people and do dumb shit with people. And mind you, I am in 2 other active servers and we always hang out. TLV is not the only place I hang in. You talk as if I don't know how friendship works, and that hurts. I appreciate your thoughts, but I don't appreciate that I am being talked down. Especially that you come by to me with mostly assumptions and one-sided view. My tones and wordings are my words, and I'm aware of what I say to people. I won't say things that I would regret my entire life the next later. And no, friendships do not work with barter system, give and take. I know friendships is more than giving presents. I know how to treasure one, many. But I also need to be considerate of my times. I know I'm a busy person and I can't always just end up hanging out with people every day. But I also need to be considerate of my times. I know I'm a busy person, and I can't always just end up hanging out with people every day and abandon my adulthood light. The way I work is by letting people watch me work via streams. That's how I get motivated even if they don't say a single word about what I'm doing. I have a parent that struggles with financial issues. I sometimes starve for days working just to get myself fed. My other parent, aka dad, is doing nothing to feed me or my ma. Which is a horrible situation, but I know how I've seen you act towards people and it makes me upset. That's what I'm saying. And what is that act? Tell me. I honestly don't know how to get my feelings across to you. I've said what I can at this moment. Most of what I wanted to say was put in that first message. Yeah, majority of it from one-sided view, the way you see it. Yeah, that's the point. And I was telling you what I was seeing. And that's not how you should take it either. I am literally right here. You can talk and confirm me about it rather than accumulating your entire POV like find and detect, like some sort of game. You barely hang out with me to even make a solid point, so I'm not sure that what you said can be taken in a positive way. Gaslighting at its worst, making the victim feel unimportant, denying their feelings in the situation, constantly shifting the subject to be about himself, or those who view him in only a positive light are all signs of it. Every message from Zeke thus far incorporates some sort of manipulation. He doesn't try to hide it very well either, with the amount of times he flip-flops between his own words. The mentions of these issues stemming from Shu's view of him rather than his own is in an attempt to sway their perspective. Zeke even tries to argue that Shu hasn't spent enough time with him for their words to hold any substance to him. He is aware the more time spent gives more opportunities to sway their opinion of him. When someone's view on his character changes, he becomes irrational and in denial of wrongdoing. It's not really supposed to be positive, SD. To be honest, I was just trying to make a point to tell you that you've been acting rude, but nothing I'm saying is getting across. How you affect other people isn't something I can ask you about, because it's not something you could possibly be aware of until someone says something, which is what I'm doing. Then tell me, when did I act rude? How often did you see it coming from me? Is it mostly from external views? If it's just like that, then I get this entire conversation as trying to police the way I do things rather than genuine advice. I have other things to worry about unless later you still have more stuff to say, then feel free. But I won't be considering anything unless proven otherwise. Have a good rest. I talked to my friends. None of them has think of me like the way you do. And I have persisted them to say the truth, and everyone has been genuine, so... Don't know who you asked, but sick. I tried conveying mine and a few others' feelings, but I don't think you're understanding what I've been saying. I'll just leave it off here, I guess. Nah, I think it's better you don't try to narrate what I do in my life. Even when I reread everything until now, none sound okay to me, especially coming from you. I feel very dehumanized, and that's not very funny. Coming from you? What do you mean by this exactly? By someone who I treasure with all my life. Someone that should at least know me enough. I guess I don't, SD. I'll be real, nothing of what I said is dehumanizing. I know what that is, and I didn't do anything like that. All I did was present problems, right? And you didn't acknowledge them. Nor did you consider that I was saying this stuff because I thought we were friends. I thought that, you might consider that you'd take in my fucking views. Because I talked with people that hangs out with me very often, and even they are shocked that you were saying this. At the end of the day, it didn't reach out very well to me, and I have not asked for it, and rather than all I did was present the problems, instead, I feel gaslighted. Like, I even considered to go to therapy just from reading your thing. Not until everyone came by and told me that none of what you said is true. That's also coming from people who sit in VC 24/7 with me ever since last year. Just reread the way you were saying stuff to me. They are dehumanizing. It's not meant to be positive at all. It's like you are trying to educate someone who doesn't know how friendship works at all, like I'm some sort of clueless, ignorant bastard. If you think I'm not aware who I pushed away, I do. I very, very much do know and see. And I do that especially if they have crossed my boundaries or my friends' boundaries at any point. I disconnected from some people because they are minors who admitted to browsing my not safe for work art. People who have brought genuine insensitive stuff to me, hurt my friends, and so. People who have brought and rubbed triggers to my face like I don't know, man. The bigger the fandom, the more people like this I have to deal with. At first it came off like, oh, I don't know, the fuck's happening, but I hope it is not the way I thought, to, no, yeah, what I see is true and I have to shove this down your throat. The thing you said could have been enough to drive me to, You know what? If it's not for my friend that says otherwise, because I contemplated it for 2 nights, full of anxiety and paranoia. And the one that I talked to are more than 9 people. I dared myself to ask that in a public server, and all of them are fucking surprised at the stuff you say. It's not meant to be positive, that much is true, but it was never meant to make you feel dehumanized. Then mayhap try not to see me in a certain POV and instead getting to know all sides would have been better to make a judgment? Those words are not the thing you throw around like toys, Gray. I try very hard to not be disappointed at you, but now it's getting more and more harder to do so. This came from a person who have listened to the way I talk every time we are in VC, ever since last year, one of the person who hangs out with me the most. I know they have other friends to cater to, but instead they chose to hang out with me. SD, can I just say that you are really one of the nicest people on here? Like, I genuinely enjoy hanging out with you. I'm glad I can call you a friend. And out of all the people I know, you are one of the few that I trust the most. So hearing about the thing from earlier made my blood boil, because how the fuck can anyone say that about you? They're so wrong. They don't know you at all. Without a person like this, I would have been fucking gone. Every single one of these people have been with me ever since last year, saw the way I do things publicly via my Twitter and servers, sit with me in VC, and listen to what I do very often. I'd rather believe them than you because, to be fair, you only came in to talk to me very rarely. I don't think you've been rude ever. Not from what I've seen. I don't think I've ever seen you be especially rude to anyone either. SD is the nicest person, bro. How can someone just have the balls to say that? From the several hours I've spent around SD, I don't think I've had a single negative experience. Not from him, at least. I'm really sorry if I ever hurt anyone, and I do my best not to. From the 1 to 2 years I've been here, SD has never been rude or anything like that. It would be just like teasing or something, but really nothing wrong, and personally never made me uncomfortable. Can confirm I've never had a negative thing said to me from SD. Yeah, SD is so cool and nice and friendly. Agreed. There's literally more, but a lot of words of diss, and I don't want to direct that to you. I honestly don't care. I don't know these people, and honestly it's fine. You have met some in VC. Thanks for caring though, that side, to be honest. And I want an honest answer from you. Did you try to make Honkish talk to me? Because if you do realize how tired they are from all the shit they went through. They really don't need to care about all this thing at all. My guy needs to go to therapy soon. No, I'll be completely honest with you, I didn't. You're kinda fucking talking like he's not one of my best friends. I know fully well what he's going through. And have not brought him into this purely because he doesn't need that stress. So don't fucking talk to me like I did this knowing he's having a rough time. See, even you get mad when I say as though you know nothing of it. What do you think I feel with the way you talk to me? This is fucking insane, dude. Talk like this. Leave Honkish out of this, for the love of God. I am, and I already told him to stop responding to me. Look, the purpose of that entire thing you're trying to deliver to me is now just pure blatant insults rather than its original purpose to, quote, let me know of the thing I'm not aware of. From what I understand, you said that I have done woogie boogie stuff towards people and I need to, quote, improve myself, while you, only taking and picking little things you see in your own POV, decided to give me a judgment? Not just that, but insisting that I have to improve, while I don't see anything that I have to improve on? Please, I am begging of you to repurpose and reconstruct the things you see. It's driving me insane. It's irritating to you, you worry, and I worry too. And far off, I do not and will not want to have a bad relationship with you. You mean so much to me even with this entire fucking argument. I've seen you grow and I just want to see you improve more. In art especially. The least I can say is that what I do is what I will get. If I get karma, if I get shit at all thrown in my face, you bear none of the responsibilities but me. No one bears that at all except me. At the end of the day, I just want to see you as my little bro, man. I really do not want you to be here to narrate my actions. I'd rather go to a professional than relying on someone who's underaged. That's literally against my morale. I understand what I'm doing. I'm turning 22 next year, for fuck's sake. If I do not know what I'm doing in my life, I'd be dead by then. Fair. For now, do you want to talk or take a break? Or had enough to say? I'd leave you to rest if you need a break. I'm upset about you pushing the idea that I almost made you kill yourself. That wasn't fucking cool at all. Pushing the idea? The thing you said was genuinely painful to hear. And at far the most brutal things have said my ways. But I will not talk about that right now. Enough is enough. You should rest. Talk if you must again about the current thing, but not now. The continuous dismissal of Shu's feelings, guilting them, treating it as irrational, repeatedly explaining how much they mean to him, doubling down on his behavior, mentioning Shu's own need for improvement, this is all indicative of grooming behavior. Zeke habitually brings the conversation to his friends out of context and use their words against Shu. They even begin to insult them as mentioned by Zeke, all entirely unnecessary. Even goes as far as to accuse Shu of almost driving him to suicide because of what they said. I feel it's important to remember that Zeke is 21 at this point and Shu is only 17. The end of the conversation as far as screenshots go, Zeke finished it off by advising Shu to rest and not continue. The second situation regarding Honkish and Zeke's conversation is far shorter and to the point. I'll read it through and give my final concluding statement for this section. Hey Judas, I've recently thought about something and I've talked about it with my friends, and I think I'm reaching a conclusion about something very important. This won't end on a good note, as a warning, but I'd rather talk it out than not. I know you like to avoid people and talking about serious stuff in general, as well as messaging people, or just being serious, at all. So if you do see this message, I would like to talk it with you. And please, do not be high on weed if you finally came by. I see. Yeah, I'm fine with talking about stuff, but I'd rather not do it in call. I'm not gonna call. I don't feel comfortable at all to begin with. Alright, I don't know what's going on all of a sudden, but I'm all ears, I suppose. Okay, first thing first, I have finally fully decided to fully end my friendship with you. I see. Well, that's your choice. If that's what makes you happy, then I can't really fault you for that. And at this point, I am never sure you even treat me as a genuine friend, but I'll say it that way anyway. There is so much recurring stuff and things that I finally realized that brought me to this conclusion. There is so much stuff that you do that deeply hurts me, and I cannot realize this without the help of my friends talking it out with me. And I'm sure even those stuff that have hurt could have been talked with. I doubt you will take any of those conversations seriously, and neither will you reply to my messages at all because of how constant you ghost people. I don't even want to hear any reasonings behind this anymore. Will I give my empathy for it? It ends here. It is very rare for you to come by unless it is within your favor or if it's just something silly, and I'm very tired of you. I dislike labeling people, nor do I like telling people the way it is. But you are genuinely the most egotistical, narcissistic, and a whole definition of a walking superiority complex all in one go. You won't even care about all these messages I type because it didn't matter to you. Wow. Look at how simply you let go of me too, without even a bit of effort to talk. And that's how much I am done with you. Whatever stuff there is in the past, whatever stuff we have done together, I'll let go of them and this will be the end of everything. And I won't buy any of your words anymore. Fine by me. If you truly think I say this just because I want to, instead of thinking why, then I don't even care anymore. Goodbye, it was nice knowing you. As of the project we're in together, I will put you off my personal ones, but you have to talk to Clover yourself regarding Smoke 'Em Out Struggle DX. When faced with a similar situation, the exception being he's the one who criticized his friend's behavior, Zeke's hypocrisy and carelessness really show. Even here, he attempts to guilt-trip Honkish after informing them of wanting to cut off their friendship. Honkish respects this decision and doesn't push forward, but Zeke cites this as a lack of care to villainize them. He fails to properly explain what was done wrong in the first place, ironically enough. A noticeable repeated pattern in both situations is the position of power he holds over both Shu and Honkish. When he is the subject of criticism, he primarily plays victim, but when he isn't, he uses whatever he can for his own gain. His friends, circumstances, reputation, and the insecurities and fears of others. Moving on to Section 4 is where it becomes overtly clear that desensitization and normalization are two commonplaces in Zeke's server. From openly sharing his writings about his quote serial rapist character to one of the minors in his server, to being complicit with this same person collaborating with his 25-year-old friend on fanfiction involving incest and sexual abuse. This even includes the two as self-insert characters. Not only that, but he allowed underage members to send suggestive art. These are all things Zeke excuses and doesn't consider a problem in his eyes. That includes doubling down on a member sending graphic artwork of their characters in the Safe for Work art channel with a content warning. Warning: implied abuse, blood, gore, depersonalization, racism, and CSA. Zeke proceeded to argue, quote, "It would be quite hypocritical to say that what they're doing is terrible just because it shows CSA and gore, especially when the artwork doesn't even fetishize or romanticize those aspects." To which I provide clarification on why this is an issue. The server is 15+. This content was sent in the art channel marked Safe for Work. Spoiler or not, it was graphic and therefore shouldn't have been sent there, especially because it contained uncensored child sexual assault drawn of the artist's character. Since Zeke can never assume accountability for himself, he still tried to shift blame onto the document for censoring the artwork, alleging, "You would think that the artworks are pornographic, which is why they are censored." That wasn't the case. Again, it was censored because it was graphic and the artist's caption has zero mention of pornographic material because it didn't contain it. In this same counter-argument, he comments, "I sure hope you also criticize those other FNF mods for having gore. Surely it's not like they're well praised inside the community despite doing the same thing, right?" So, setting aside the evidence of him introducing these same mods to a member of his server as yet another moment of projection and hypocrisy, it is important to bring to light this moment where he allowed this user to stream a mod that mocks real victims of suicide, including a 14-year-old child, Roro-chan, and Ronnie McNutt, whose graphic suicide is animated in it. Zeke was told what it contained and yet still allowed this to ensue rather than shut it down on the spot. Surprising, since it is about real people. He also streamed work on his suggestive mod, again in the public VC of his server, as minors can be seen commenting about it. This behavior is desensitization. The more frequently exposed to a material, the less sensitive a victim becomes to it. It's the same behavior used previously. This makes it far more difficult for the victim to be aware of anything wrong and/or agree with Zeke's rationalization of it. He enables this by excusing it and partaking himself, which simultaneously normalizes it. Zeke's response to this was grouped in with Section 1, which I've already explained. There was also an incident that occurred not in his server, but during his initial popularity as a Friday Night Funkin' artist, where he was, and still is, most known for drawing the mod character Garcello. His popularity meant gaining the attention of the character's creator and voice actor, Atsuover and RAINNrainn respectively. This all led to him working on a fan mod called Smoke 'Em Out Struggle DX with a team of his friends and others. Two of the members were honkish and another whose name will be redacted for safety. There was a song planned to be included in this mod that involved the character in a maid outfit. He specifically paid honkish thousands of dollars for much of the mod work they did for him. Not only was the mod suggestive, but both honkish and the song's coder/charter were minors. Honkish was 16 to 17 and the other was 15. Zeke was 21 to 22 years old. The coder stated that Zeke always complimented her work but was never sexual to her directly. Here is footage of the song, called Cock, and its sprites. Most concerningly, the song was supposed to be kept a secret. According to the coder, Zeke's alleged reasoning for this was because he planned for it to be a quote, funny joke song to surprise people. The mod was never released as he was shunned from the Hazy River sub-community and decided to move away from it. The addition of secrecy playing a role here as a way to hide his actions is textbook grooming. This is section 8. The topic was ignorantly reduced to nothing more than discourse, and it was incredibly frustrating to witness. In regards to this community, it is an absolute fact that it has been a breeding ground for pedophiles due to the topic and being inherently sexual and suggestive since the moment of its conception, even with so many safe for work creators who self-identify with the labels or use the terms involved. This is something individuals of this community and outside it agree with, and it's because of this that it is encouraged to keep these spaces for adults only as to fully reduce risks. Zeke argues that he and his members see these labels as body types or in relation to being short and petite regardless of age. It is for the best not to include minors in these conversations, yet he's allowed them to use these terms on themselves without seeing any sort of problem with it. Two examples being a 17-year-old jokingly doing so and a 16-year-old using the term on their persona, a representation of themselves. This is obviously unacceptable to allow, let alone encourage, and it has been expressed by both communities that it shouldn't have happened. You claim, quote, I find no issues with it because we see it as reclaiming a label, and go on to discuss with underage members about your safer interpretation of fetishistic terms and content as they allow themselves to be referred to as those very terms. Even Zeke uses the word shota sexually or suggestively, admits this, and it occurs in the server multiple times. To refer to a smaller body type, you'd use petite, short, or small because that is exactly what the words mean and always have. It's general knowledge that Zeke has an incredibly loyal fanbase of people that will do practically anything to defend him, including mass false reporting users against him. More often than not, if there's a post giving a negative opinion on Zeke, the same group of people are in the replies at his defense. Zeke facilitates this behavior both directly and indirectly through the use of influence. Sitting on a platform of nearly 13,000, anything he brings attention to is obviously rated by his fans. This is all intentional despite he and his friends stating otherwise. Under the privacy of his server, he's both directed his friends to mass report profiles and encouraged similar behavior by creating a channel dedicated entirely to online discourse. Any individual would keep toxic behavior away from a space where minors are included because of how easily influenced they can be, or at least discourage it as best they can. To the surprise of no one, this was not the case here, saying not a word about his members seeking people to harass and argue with constantly, mass report, and even insult with derogatory usage of the R slur. An interesting choice to make after saying something like this. He is correct about this as well. Again, building a relationship and connection with the victim for the ultimate goal of personal gain includes forming a deep and personal bond with your audience of fans and friends, then weaponizing them in this manner. To his audience, this also plants the idea that going against you in any sort of way means being a target of this same treatment. Many of his former friends expressed their fear of him and his audience solely because of this, both when they were still friends and after cutting contact with him. He even felt the need to out one specific person by name who was and is still a minor. They eventually addressed this and explained that they were only 14 to 15 during their friendship with Zeke and when this incident occurred. They weren't involved in the doc and was mentioned purely because they are very vocal about their experiences with him. Zeke did this simply because they were a former friend who was harmed by his actions, which are people he commonly villainizes. Intimidation and control are two of the biggest grooming behaviors, and they're utilized in these instances to the fullest. This concludes the section regarding the grooming allegations against Viruszeke. Next, I will be bringing to light Zeke's other carelessly problematic actions that call his character into question. The title is self-explanatory and everything is thoroughly explained in its section of the same name in the evidence doc. Unsurprisingly, this wasn't addressed in the response despite the fact that Zeke's own server members were incredibly uncomfortable and against this decision upon learning it. Many of them were victims of child sexual abuse and/or sexual assault. I want to clarify here that this person has the help she needs from professionals and is doing far better. I do not want anyone looking into her personally. This is entirely Zeke's fault, not hers, so please leave her be. Thank you. Viruszeke felt it was up to him to invite a pedophile into his server without any of the members knowing this information for her safety. She was 16, the minimum age requirement to be diagnosed with a pedophilic disorder or as a pedophile, and it was told to me by Zeke that she lurked in pedophilic websites that possibly contained child sexual exploitation material because she felt alone in other spaces. Thus, he feared that not giving her a space to be in or suddenly dropping her would impact her mental state. He specifies that he thought not doing so could also lead to her targeting a victim, or be targeted herself. During this time, she was not seeking active therapy and was clearly in an unstable state of mind. Genuinely, I had no clue what to do. Though this has long settled, I would like to know your input on it. He mentions knowing about her parents and home life and encourages her to seek therapy, which she has and is at the moment. The decision to invite her to his server was one of his worst, but the decision to not address it nor apologize is far more abhorrent. The way that he handles this argument specifically is the third most irresponsible. Here, Zeke goes into a situation with his cat Worm, a pet, not a stray, that his mother got for the home and something he was against due to their living situation and wanting to stay under their savings capacity. The cat ended up passing away due to malnourishment after giving birth as described by him, explaining that his mother's neglect was the cause and not his own. But the most interesting thing he says in the first paragraph is in the end, where he says that only his close friends were aware of his, quote, cat issue, and that making it public was a breaching of his consent and his rights. Full stop here, this is a blatant and ignorant lie that he immediately contradicts in the next two paragraphs. In the section regarding Worm, the pictures from his Twitter were public tweets directly from him and made years before the evidence document was posted. The earliest tweet shown in the doc regarding Worm was from the 28th of March 2023, while the doc officially released on the 5th of February 2025. You would think the quote law student he got to overlook his document would point out that discrepancy. It is not a breach of privacy to bring up already public information even if the account it's from is private. The term he uses here is also incorrect. No one illegally breached your account. What you meant to say was invasion of privacy, which again, the information was already public and the info provided in the response is what you chose to publicize. Viruszeke explains how despite his protests against keeping the cat, his mother ultimately forced all the responsibility on him and treated Worm as pest control. He says that his mom was allergic to cat fur, had asthma, and forced him to put the cat outside. I've already mentioned that we were broke, and I know how my mom treats cats. I spent everything and a good chunk of my life attending to my cat's needs. Despite her telling me that she would be sick from the fur, I put the cat inside the house. I didn't care and fought for the cat's safety. He mentions having to split money for both his cat's needs and his father's cancer bills, adding that his father's state was his biggest priority. She died due to malnourishment, specifically after giving birth. I begged my mom to drive her to the vet, to give her more nutritional food, to give her more than kibbles. She refused. My money wasn't enough and I had no driver's license. As I mentioned, I was forced to put her outside several times. It was already too late. My mom kept telling me that she'll be fine when she's not, and in this household I have zero power against my mom, and convincing her about Worm's declining health is like talking to a brick wall. I want to make one thing very clear. I fully understand that there were bigger things to prioritize financially in this situation, and having a stubborn mother is a tough situation to be in. It feels almost impossible to try to convince a family member that refuses to listen and it can often feel like a never-ending battle. But there's something I want to bring up in that regard. Only a couple days after first receiving Worm was Zeke's birthday, as he mentions here. At that point, he'd be 22 years old. Legally, his mother had zero authority over his decisions, especially at that age. Another thing to remember is that Zeke had access to his phone, friends, and by extension, the internet. Worm was their cat and she wasn't being provided her necessities, proper vet care, and unfortunately suffered as a result. By all means, Zeke was within his legal right to do the following. Explore rehoming options, other family, trusted friends and neighbors, websites and apps. Fostering, contacting local rescue organizations, programs, or humane societies. If he explained his circumstances, they'd offer help for the cat's well-being or provide more options. Surrendering to a shelter, no kill if possible. In the absence of transportation, attempt to request for her pickup. Online services are also available. Social media, requesting financial assistance, adoption options, advice, etc. Asking friends for help. Search for pet food banks and pantries online or in person. They offer discounted or free food. Explore financial assistance. Animal welfare organizations and charities can offer financial aid for pet care. Speaking to your vet, explain your circumstances. They can offer cost-effective treatment or offer other options possible, like payment plans or rehoming candidates. Request to post or request help from online groups or pages specific to your situation, Facebook or Instagram. Explore further options by using the internet or available contacts when possible. Note that a lot of these services could be provided for free if you say that the cat is a stray. Most importantly, giving the cat back to its previous owner. This is something he mentions in response to one of his server members showing concern over the cat's state. His mother can't take the cat back from its owner, nor would they want to return her if they were made aware of how she was treated. Not only that, but explaining this to his mother could have helped her to see and understand that there are a variety of options that are both free and/or cost-effective. Zeke has the time and patience to spend hours and days at a time on social media and games or researching sources and websites to support him in debates, dedicating some of it to properly research other available options with the resources he has wouldn't be strenuous in comparison. His mom refused X and Y. Again, Zeke was 22. His mother had no legal authority over him, and while she may be able to influence his decisions, anyone can really, he had and has full legal independency. Worm is his mom's cat. He can't take her away. I know this wasn't made clear, but just for this specific hypothetical, we'll say it's a fact. If Worm was strictly his mother's cat, her treatment of her falls under animal cruelty due to neglect and ill treatment. Malaysia in particular has the Animal Welfare Act updated in 2015 meant to hold violators accountable for animal cruelty. Even now, these are sadly under-enforced. Regardless, it is a criminal offense. The legal route to take here would be reporting the abuse to the proper authorities, like police or local humane societies. Obviously, it's a slippery slope and often very difficult to even consider calling the authorities on a parent, and understandably so if you rely on them, even if a genuine crime is being committed. In any case, the other option available, while not exactly legal, is morally correct. That being, taking the cat away yourself and looking into some of the options I provided here. Or otherwise. Planning how to do so is up to the person and circumstances, but if anything, he has contacts and resources available to him. He can't afford X and Y. Many of the options I listed previously are cost-effective or free, but it is also not impossible for Zeke himself or a friend of his to find what else is reliably available. Often just explaining that your financial situation is tied to a rescue center, shelter, or vet will help them understand and provide what most fits. Even better, having access to a phone means being able to contact whoever's necessary without transportation. You can request someone pick the cat up, find places close enough to travel to, or prioritize rehoming and surrender options. A lot of these don't even require an in-person visit. What if a lot of these options aren't available in Malaysia? The internet is your most vital resource here, and so are the people you know. There are phone numbers to call, websites and apps all available for him to explore. They aren't instant fixes, many require time and are dependent on circumstance, but they are still available options. He mentions having taken Worm to the vet, so that's already one option that has professionals that can offer resources without the need to actually be there either if he asks for contact information. I'll provide some examples I was able to find with a couple Google searches showing that it is possible to start looking for options at a moment's notice. The last thing mentioned in relation to his animals was the fact that his mother had gotten 2 cats since Worm's passing and that they are being primarily cared for by an apparent butler. At the very least now, there is a third party providing the animals some sort of care. Zeke might not have been the facilitator in this situation, but there were far more options available. Even having internet access is more than what many people have in this situation. An animal is a living being, not a tool or a toy. Right off the bat, I can tear down this argument by bringing up the very first statement made, but before I do, I'll provide some quick necessary context. This section is directed towards me, someone obviously involved in creating content relating to Friday Night Funkin'. The owner of the Garfield Burner account on Twitter where the evidence doc was posted is not involved in anything related to the game and didn't frequent Twitter all too much until now. You worry about me and my friends talking about taboo topics which we can grasp how severe it is in real life, but do you realize what fandom you're in where minors were encouraged to do mods when the original content and the game marked itself as this? In this counter-argument, instead of responding to an accusation, he uses a counter-accusation. This image, used as evidence to show the game's age rating being mature 17+, is an album cover for the 3rd volume of the game's soundtrack. Each cover is stylized, and the rating label stuck onto this one is fake and part of the theming. Friday Night Funkin' doesn't yet have an official rating as it's only a demo. Its only age rating at the moment is provided on Newgrounds where it's rated T for teens. Phantom Arcade, the game's creator, specified that the game will be rated T for the console release of the finished game. He states that it'd be toned down, have certain things removed, and include multiple censorship options like the one provided in the demo. However, he also clarifies that the PC release of the finished game on Steam and Newgrounds will be rated M. The PC rating is based on the crude humor and comedic violence with no plans to include pornographic or truly disturbing content.
Friday Night Funkin'. Okay, Friday Night Funkin' I think will be rated M on PC. But I think for the console version, we'll take out stuff and add censorship options, because like you can turn the blood off in this game, and this game's only rated like T. So I think we'll get the game to a T state, but on like Steam and of course on Newgrounds, the game's gonna be rated M. They're gonna say really naughty words to each other, and there's gonna be like a lot of comedic violence. There will never be anything like crazy, like there will never be anything like truly disturbing or bizarre in the game, but you know, it's just gonna be like just funny shit, just funny, the stuff you've been seeing. I don't want to like ruin this for people. There will never be like, yeah, it's a meme to ask. There will never be like hardcore like pornographic content in Friday Night Funkin'. Sorry to break it to you. You know, like there will be like illusions. Like maybe there will be like a silhouette where like they jump into a bed together or something, or like, you know, maybe like people will have like cartoonishly long like tents pitched in their pants, but like there's never gonna be anything like those Atari 2600 games or anything, if you know what I'm talking about. Like any stuff that's in the game that is sexual will always be like comedic.
To conclude, the game will be for both teens and mature audiences on release. I won't be getting too deep into the rest of this section due to its irrelevance. It's also incredibly poorly worded and difficult to decipher what point he's trying to make, besides somehow trying to blame me for the fact that underage users on Twitter post or do things they shouldn't. The most ironic part is the fact that whatever points made here can be applied to him. Zeke is still actively in the fandom and has been for nearly the same amount of time as I have. As mentioned before, he was well known for his fan creations of Garcello, whose name he is reluctant to utter in any capacity. This is the millionth contradictory statement in this document, and the unprofessionalism is something that'll be touched on later. You're encouraged to read this section for yourself by all means. Straight to the point, if you compare online shipping discourse with real-world oppression against minorities, you are beyond tone deaf. The worst case of oppression given when trying to explain this comparison is being shunned from the internet. because that is the absolute worst type of oppression comparable to what minorities go through. Never being able to open a social media app again. Though I suppose it makes sense to lack awareness and empathy to such a degree when those who defend you consider the inability to read a poorly formatted document full of rainbow-colored text and fonts a reader's issue, and deny an Asian person's ethnicity because of their differing opinion. People only matter most to you when they are on your side. Zeke's wording of real victims particularly baffled me. The topics of child sexual abuse and sexual assault are complex, and every experience is different. This is something he should know. What makes a real victim? Is it only someone who agrees with your perspective? Does disagreement of your actions and mindset make me, others, or any of your former friends less of a victim? A victim is not any more or less of a victim based on the side they choose in an argument. It will never invalidate their victimhood and the trauma they experienced. On a similar note, Zeke overall lacks any sort of boundary awareness. Multiple instances of him trying to push labels onto people were brought up in the evidence document. Bringing this up is to connect to the point of insensitivity to victims of CSA and his own entitlement. On both ends of the spectrum here, there are good and there are bad, but neither are innocent, and both have individuals who commit heinous actions in the name of their activism. It is not wrong for sexual assault victims to cope with dark fiction, but it is also not wrong for victims damaged by those topics to provide retrospectives and explain the reasoning for their opinions based on trauma. Invalidating victims for either ideals harms them as a whole. People are also generally allowed to be uncomfortable and should have those boundaries respected. I want to include a personal anecdote here. I'm a victim of grooming since I was about 13 to 14, and a victim of CSA which I don't feel comfortable giving the details of. My experience isn't everyone's by any means. Instead, it helps me recognize the signs where most outsiders looking in wouldn't due to the public's perceived way of what grooming looks like. It isn't always obvious and can look like an entirely different thing altogether if you don't understand it. There are unfortunately people who try to excuse this occurring in an attempt to save face. In this instance, several people at Zeke's defense either brushed it off or couldn't care to understand exactly how his behavior was grooming at all. The term grooming isn't just a throwaway line that someone can deploy against a person they dislike. Unfortunately, social media has watered down the severity of it and often lumps it in with pedophilia, in spite of both terms being entirely different but can go hand in hand depending on the situation. This leads to cases where it isn't taken seriously and thus nothing changes. In the end, what I hope to achieve here is both providing a clear understanding of grooming and identifying and connecting the behavior to the evidence against Viruszeke. Zeke has a string of mistakes he's made that he seemingly never learns from. He makes it a point to mention how he's grown and changed since his past actions and that they no longer apply to him anymore. That mistake happened when I was 19. I've grown mature and more careful every passing year, even from 2023, let alone 2020. You seem resistant to the idea of improvement and change. It would be different if our mistakes were frequent. Besides what was already listed here, there are a couple things he mentions in the response document I'd like to bring light to. In 2020, Zeke was 19 when he sent suggestive art to a minor. His friend Emin/Fagatron, currently 25, also did this, but their age at the time this occurred isn't known. In 2022, Zeke was 21 when a decently close friend of his wanted to learn an adult video game, and thus he taught them. Zeke states that he trusted that they were an adult. Not once during their entire friendship did he ever confirm their age by simply asking. This person didn't have their age in their bio when he checked. 2 weeks after this interaction, he learned their age as it was finally added. They were 15. These cases he admitted to are in addition to everything else publicly known with supporting evidence. These are not one-off occurrences. It is a constant cycle of putting people in danger, insisting on change, and further proving that he simply does not have the capacity to improve himself while he has a platform and spaces to share with others. In this section, I'd like to take the time to address some concerns on behalf of the Garfield burner account. These will be quick and to the point. Number 1. The account owner blocked one of the victims. The user who sent this message to the account was one whose name wasn't properly censored in one of the screenshots. Initially, this message wasn't seen by the account owner due to their account being flagged as spam and thus put in a separate inbox away from regular message requests. Once Garfield Burner was able to access and read this message, their name was censored in the document. This person continues to message the account in defense of Zeke to an obsessive level. Another user involved requested censorship and had their name redacted within a screenshot as well, with no issue as it was related to an online stalker situation. Any minors within the evidence shown had their names censored. Number 2, the document lied about asking for consent beforehand. This screenshot kept out the full message at the very beginning of the evidence document. Here it is in its entirety. It is specifically referring to anyone who would like to provide additional evidence to the document and wanting anonymity, also clarifying that if they do provide evidence, it wouldn't be added without their consent. Zeke doesn't even understand how consent works. In this now removed section of Zeke's rebuttal, the person whose apology he supposedly received consent to include wasn't told at all that it was being used as a point in his response document against grooming allegations. They requested it be removed as a result. Number 3, regarding this, the only person specified as a groomer was Zeke. The inclusion of this screenshot and the one of T-Bird's girlfriend was the same as the rest in this section. It's concerning the topic of Lolly and Shotokan in the server where it shouldn't be. The addendum was added because of his ill-informed assumptions. Why he automatically assumed the document was calling him a groomer is unbeknownst to anyone. The poor apology done out of obligation rather than sincerity, threats over his assumptions, and then playing victim because of the consequences of his actions is a questionable move to pull. Take accountability sincerely, not just because you were caught. Number 4. Why were Zeke's friends included in a document about him? This goes without saying, but his adult friends were either part of the situation and/or contributed. They vehemently defend him and will blatantly lie to do so and regurgitate his defenses to others out of blind loyalty. It is a direct result of Zeke's influence, and he takes advantage of his friends' care for him as a crutch to lean on when criticism is made against him very often. This includes his teen-aged friends. The people he surrounds himself with creates an echo chamber that feeds into his behavior. In the end, it all conclusively connects back to him. Viruszeke has been able to get away with what he's done time and time again for years. Many of his victims were young, former friends of his that he demonizes frequently. When he is unable to excuse what he did, Zeke resorts to keeping them unaddressed and bringing up the good he's done. He feeds off of attention, keeping his reputation and taking advantage of his fan base as best he sees fit for personal gain. There is no level of delusion higher than his own, even asking that the burner account who posted the document reveal himself to him and apologize personally for revealing what he'd done. He moved the goalpost in his response as many times as he could to excuse his actions in the public eye. In the midst of the initial document's release, Zeke continued to post on his social media and made it apparent several times that he was working on a rebuttal, sharing the incomplete product around to members of his community several days before finally releasing it on the 11th of February. It was his attempt at shifting the tide of public opinion on him as hastily as possible. The document itself is full of hollow threats, irrelevant and unnecessary information, immature commentary, improper grammar, unrelated tangents, an assortment of randomized fonts and colors, and generally poorly formatted unprofessionalism. The very end explains how he'd be making an entirely separate document specifically about discourse-related topics. It is abundantly clear what he prioritizes. You are not owed an apology for the consequences of your own choices. You couldn't so much as fake sincerity in the words of your own apologies for the things you did that even you couldn't find excuses for. Time and time again, you prove yourself to be a danger to minors and continue to make the same mistakes you absolve yourself of with the good word of your misguided peers to lean on. What you did and have done is all coming back and will relentlessly follow your online presence no matter how hard you attempt to hide it all. Your downfall was entirely your own doing, and your actions will eat at you for as long as you stay in denial. I'd advise you to do better, but you won't. You've made that clear. Whew. I want to personally thank Garfield Burner's account owner and those who came forward to me to provide additional evidence. Not only did you all help me, but you also gave me the motivation to push forward. This situation reminded me of the many people like Zeke who took advantage of me and unfortunately got away scot-free. Again, I thank you and those who took the time to watch through. Your patience and consideration are very appreciated. Take care of yourselves.